I would like a math game that helps teach advanced math. While there appears to be some great math games that make learning math fun, the target demographic for most of these games are kids in primary school. During the final years of school, math gets really difficult. I don't hate math. In fact, I sometimes find doing math problems to be enjoyable. In my opinion, it's the ultimate puzzle challenge, and you can spend a lot of time working on a problem. With that in mind, math can be confusing. You can get to that one question that poses a scenario that you haven't encountered before and don't know how to solve. If you get it wrong, it's either because you did not know how to solve the question, or you make an error when calculating that messes everything up. Sometimes, after doing a math problem and seeing the correct answer, I say to myself, how is that the answer? In response to me not knowing what I did wrong. Mastering math requires a lot of practice, and just doing the questions in the math book you've given from school isn't necessarily going to cut it. So I've tried to come up with my idea for the ultimate math video game, one that focuses on the more advanced math and gives practice for players so that it can improve their ability to solve these kinds of problems on an exam. Like I said, math is the ultimate puzzle challenge, and I think you could use mathematics as the basics for a video game. I'm definitely not the first to think about this. The goal with a game like this is to make math fun and understandable for anyone who plays it. It needs to be educational, teaching the players all they need to know to solve these kinds of problems on their own. I need to point out that I'm only conceptualizing my idea for the ultimate math game. I'm not actually making this game because programming is not my strong suit. So how to turn math into a video game? Well, all the math we do at school, in theory, should represent something in the real world. The reason why we learn math is because we may have use for it in our day-to-day lives. Therefore, I think the game could show how the math we learn is beneficial by creating puzzles that use math in realistic scenarios. Unfortunately, I only have faint ideas of how these puzzles could be. There's only one scenario I've actually come up with at this point. In this scenario, you need to cross a chasm and reach a ledge opposite to the ledge you're standing on. Now let's say the distance between your ledge and the ledge you're trying to reach is 10 meters, but there's also a height difference where the ledge you're trying to reach is 5 meters lower down from the ledge you're standing on. You could try to figure out how to cross by using different math techniques. For example, you can use the Pythagorean method to figure out how long of a rope you need to get across, and the rope needs to be an exact length, otherwise you'd fall into the chasm. In another scenario, you could try using quadratics to figure out an ideal run-up speed you need to make a jump from one ledge to the other. Although being a bit logical here, is it really sensible to jump across a chasm? Anyhow, that's the only example I can really think of where math could be put into practice. Based on the type of questions you often get in math books, I know you could probably put it into more scenarios, but I can't really think of any. I would like it if the game does not explicitly tell you that you're using math to solve the problems, and instead that's something the players realize as they go through the game. So they're playing and they realize, wait a minute, I'm doing math! I think this would be intelligent game design, and it would definitely make the game more appealing as it doesn't feel like you're doing homework, but instead you're doing puzzles. As the player progresses, they encounter all different kinds of math scenarios, and they learn how to solve these kinds of problems, which will be useful during a math test. I want to avoid having players skipping puzzles by looking up a guide, so all the math problems need to be randomized or procedurally generated. This would mean on repeated playthroughs, players will encounter different math problems than they did on previous runs. This means they'll never run out of math problems like you do with a math book, and it could encourage players to see how quickly they can solve different types of math problems. The difficulty of the math problems should depend on the player's experience with math, and get progressively harder the further you progress in the game. Though figuring out each player's skill level would be hard to do, and I don't know how it would be set up. I think this game needs a guide which goes over the techniques required to solve different kinds of math problems. I feel that sometimes it's hard to do math when you don't know what kind of math to use. Sometimes you don't know what rules to apply to the problem you're trying to solve, so a guide would be useful in teaching the method for solving specific puzzles. Players may get access to a calculator or a ruler after completing an area. Then the player can go through the area again and do puzzles that require calculators to solve. I think a math game would work the best on a system with a dual screen setup like the DS, 3DS, or Wii U. The touchscreen can be used to make calculations. You have a notepad and a calculator if you've unlocked it. Having a touchscreen setup makes writing specific math symbols much easier. The only drawback to writing on the touchscreen may be wrist cramp, but I think that's fine. Preferably, the touchscreen should only be for calculating, not for writing the answer. If my original idea is realized, then the player should show the correct answer by solving the puzzle displayed on the top screen. I worry that players would continuously guess the answer until they get it right. To counter this, players who guess will be kicked out of the area, and the puzzle will reset when they re-enter. It may be difficult to program the game to identify when someone is guessing the answer, but I think it would be useful to have something like that. The question then is if the game will be fun if it's set up like this. I worry it may become monotonous if you're doing the same thing over and over. With how I'm envisioning the gameplay would be entering a room, observing the environment, start writing information, calculating, and then solving. It sounds monotonous when I put it like that. This could be avoided by coming up with a multitude of clever puzzles for each math topic, though I can't think of any and that's my problem. Plus there needs to be good flow between puzzles that makes sense. I mean, if you go from crossing a ravine to doing measurements in a kitchen, that would feel weird. In addition to going over every individual topic, the player will have to unlock puzzles that combine aspects from different math topics, like functions and calculus. These will be called mixed challenges, I think, and are unlocked once players have completed two topics that are often used in tandem. The game also needs an exam mode. Here players are tested as they would on an actual exam, with little to no available resources for solving the math puzzles. I don't know when this should be unlocked, but there should be a setting to choose what kind of math problems to combine, and how you want the exam to be. The final aspect I need to consider is how the game should show players getting the answer wrong. While I already consider the consequence of guessing randomly, there needs to be an indication of wrong answers. I'm thinking in the chasm example, you'll know if you get the answer wrong if you fall into the chasm. I think that makes sense since you've probably miscalculated if you fell into the chasm. Like I said, it would make little sense to try to jump across. Upon failure, there should be a fail screen that gives a hint at what you're supposed to do to solve the puzzle. I'm imagining some players will blindly choose to jump across the chasm, therefore the fail text should depend on what the player did that made them fall, and then give a slight clue to what they should do. I think this game would teach players that it's better to look before you leap. With how I want this game to be, the consequences of tackling a problem without thinking will be them falling. Through practice, players will improve their math solving ability and do better in math at school. In fact, it could also teach them how to use math at home. I don't know if my ideas would actually work as a video game, or maybe the game already exists and I don't know it. However, I've been thinking about this for a while and I finally decided to let it out there. I'm glad I did that. I'll end it there for now, but please tell me what you think of my ideas, and I'll see you later.